how is everyone doing? Also, just for a quick background, just in case you don't know who I am Pierce John Ramirez, Community Manager here at Product Led. Today we have Jarie Bolander, the author of Jarie, could you please?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm the author of a couple of books. One's The Entrepreneur Ethos, which is the book that my podcast is based on. The material you're about to see in this webinar is based on a new book that I'm working on called Story-Driven Outreach. And it's how to increase your response rates on your outreach, because that's what I do for a living. So yeah, I'm super excited to be here. Really love the community. It's just been so great to kind of see everyone embrace the product-led approach, and can't wait to get your feedback and help you tell a better story about your company. That's what I do, and you'll hear a lot more about that as we go. So good morning and welcome.
Yep. Jerry's webinar, I looked at his material before setting this up, and it's downright amazing in that it hits you on the spot, like the right spots. In any case, it's 12:03. I'll start sharing the pre-recorded webinar. Feel free to send in your questions at any time. Jarie will be with us the entire time. We'll be taking note of your questions. We'll also have a focused Q&A after. Okay, so let's get started.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jarie Bolander, and I'm going to talk a little bit about story-driven outreach for product-led growth companies. How to use storytelling to align your team to your customers for sustainable growth. And this is all based on a methodology that I've been working on the last couple of years called the storyfunnel.co. So there's a ton of noise in the world, right? Everyone is trying to get heard, right? And the noise in the marketplace is really crowded, and there is lots and lots of people out there just like you and me trying to get people to use their SaaS company, right? Like free signups and trials and the whole 9 yards, right? So there is a lot of noise. So what we have to do is get back to kind of the fundamentals to get out of this noise, rise above the noise, right? And we do that through telling stories. So the world has been telling stories for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years. Your ancestors and my ancestors evolved around the campfire telling stories. You and I are sitting on this call today because our ancestors, they told the best stories. That's just a fact. We're hardwired to love a good story. It's actually in our DNA. It's how we make sense of the world, and it's how we interact with it. So once you understand this simple fact about humans, you'll be able to apply the lessons of stories to teach you how to do outreach for your product-led company, right? But before you can do any of this great outreach, right, you have to get your story straight. And a lot of people have a problem with that, right? The problem is this is really super hard. There's all these buzzwords and programs and tools and methods and crafting outreach and growth hacking. I mean, heck, I even have one called the story funnel, right? There's product-led growth. There's all sorts of things, right? And so it's super frustrating, right, to not know exactly what you're doing. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Like, you need to get your focus on what am I doing so I can tell the best stories about it. We're going to focus on outreach. What outreach means: cold email, webinars, on social media, just anything that we can kind of go out and talk to the world. We're going to focus on that because it's actually the easiest to make progress on. And everyone needs to practice how to pitch, how to do outreach, how to cold email, the whole thing, right? What we want to be able to do is tell others what we do in a clear, concise, and compelling way. And this absolutely starts with getting your story straight first, right? And you probably don't know a bunch about the story grid, but you probably have heard of a couple of the people in this picture, right? So the story grid, I went to a story grid seminar back in February 2017. It's a framework developed by Sean Coyne. He's the guy in the lower left-hand corner. He is the editor of Stephen Pressfield, who is in the lower right-hand corner over there. And If you don't know who Stephen Pressfield is, he wrote one of the most amazing books ever. It's called The War of Art. If you haven't picked it up, you absolutely need to read that book. And StoryGrid opened my eyes to the realization that if you want to learn to write a great story, you got to learn from people that have written great stories, right? You study a bunch of great stories and figure out how they work, right? And that trip was super special for me because I actually got to meet Stephen Pressfield, like one of my writing heroes, right? I also got to meet Seth Godin. I'm sure some of you guys know who he is. He's in the upper left-hand corner. He was there. And then, of course, there's Tim Grahl in the upper right-hand corner. He's a book launch expert, marketing guy, like great overall person. And that was a very powerful thing, right? But you know what? I almost didn't make it to New York City. And the reason I didn't make it to New York City, there was a massive snowstorm. And the reason why I made it was because of this woman. This is Jane. This is us actually in Nashville, in the men's bathroom of the Hermitage Hotel. If you ever get to Nashville and want to see the coolest bathroom in the world, go to the Hermitage Hotel, right? It's actually a very famous bathroom. It's been in a ton of movies, mostly mob movies, right? So Jane actually bought me the StoryGrid seminar for my birthday. And then she also hustled me on that first plane to New York City once everything opened back up. And that was an absolute life-changing event for me. It really opened my eyes to the power of storytelling. And one of the things I saw was a chart like this, right? This is first StoryGrid workshop had a chart that looked similar to this. And the reason why it was so eye-opening is because there's a pattern, right? You can see a pattern here, right? And that's important. Now, why is that important? Well, we are pattern recognizing machines, right? Like I remember how I said stories in our DNA, but there's a more fundamental thing that I learned. But before we jump into all that, let me tell you a little bit about who the heck I am, right? So I've been doing this sort of startup gig career kind of thing for the better part of 25 years. I've been at 6-7 startups. I'm working on my 7th book. And actually that book I'm working on right now is based on this webinar, crazy enough, right? But I've been in a lot of startups that have been successful, like Ion Torrent, which did semiconductor sequencing chips, got bought for $750 million. And then I've been at ones that have been a total flop, right? The experience that this has taught me about how to do, outreach your ideas, launch your products, scale companies, it taught me the most important thing was this idea of the story. Like, what are we building, right? And storytelling is really about, especially for a company and a startup, is about persuasion, right? All those cold emails, sales scripts, and the talk track that you're actually like listening to right now, all has to do with the power of persuasion. And one of the persons that's probably the most influential in persuasion is someone called Aristotle, which we will talk about in a second. But before we do that, let's just level set on some of the objectives that I have for this webinar. Now, I would love nothing more than all of you to get, what I'm saying here. If you only remember one thing, right? This idea that a story has structure. It's in our DNA, right? Outreach is persuasion. So anytime we're outreaching people, anytime we're talking to people, we're trying to persuade them, right? The best story wins. Even if your product's awesome, it's all about your story. And what we're going to talk about in a second is this thing called the big idea. That is going to be the tip of your communication spear for your startup, especially your product-led growth startup, because most important thing is to get that story straight so that everyone is saying the same thing. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Now, let's get back to Aristotle. So that's this old Greek dude, right? A couple of thousand years ago. He is the foundation, or he's a foundational thinker in Western thought, persuasion, rhetoric. He's the guy. Like, you can pretty much pull it all back to him, more or less, right? But to me, his most profound contribution to this idea of storytelling and outreach and persuasion is something he called his rhetorical triangle, right? And all stories of persuasion, right? All of them rely on this. What we're going to talk about relies on this. We can't get through all the outreach stuff I'd love to teach you guys because we don't have very much time. But if we could just get this one thing right, the rest of the world is so much easier. So persuasion, rhetorical triangle is all about three things, right? The pathos, which is the emotional appeal. That's the thing that you feel in your heart, right? The logos, or the logical or reasonable appeal. Step one, I go from here to here to here, right? And then the ethos. The ethos is the credibility appeal. How credible is the person that I'm talking to? Do I believe them, right? And so for our purposes, right, doing outreach and all these sort of things, we're going to focus on this, as well as stories have structure, right? And so you look at the story grid and you look at all these sort of things, right? Fundamentally, we have to realize, right, stories have structure, right? There's structure. We've seen the graphs, we've seen the triangle, we've seen it in our DNA. We know a good story. We do. We feel it in our bones. We can't even sometimes explain why. You know those people that tell a great story, right? Those are the ones you're going to listen to. So if stories have structure, then our outreach is going to have structure, right? And that structure is something that we have to learn and know and kind of bake in to all the outreach we do. And again, can't teach you all the stuff about outreach. I'm actually, again, working on a book on that. But if we can just get this fundamental thing about the big idea, this rhetorical triangle in our minds, then the rest of the outreach, your cold emails, your sales calls, your recruiting is all going to be a lot easier because you have now, honed and crafted your story so that it really gets results, right? And so we are going to ground the process in this thing. And really, a lot of this has come up through the work I've done with the story funnel. So we're going to ground it in the story funnel, and we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the bigger idea of the story funnel, but then we're going to narrow it down a little bit. Because again, we don't have a ton of time to do this. So this is just a taste, right? Just a taste, a teaser, right? So these fundamentals of storytelling, as well as what I call the marketer 6 core questions, really form the entire umbrella of what you're talking about. But for today, we're only going to really focus on one. But before I tell you what that one is, let me just go through quickly what the 6 core questions that every marketer needs to know. This is any product or company, right? What's the core value of your brand? What's the big idea? What's the story through line? The through line is from beginning to middle to end, right? What are your customers' wants and needs? What's the structure of your offering, and what are the requirements of your offering, right? So we can't get into all this because this is a lot. But fundamentally, right, these are sort of the things that all marketers have to ask themselves, right? But for our outreach today, what we're going to do today, we're only going to answer one of these questions. And we're actually going to do this. We're actually going to go through how to build this thing so that by the end of this webinar, you will have a big idea for your company, brand, whatever, right? That's very important because I really want you guys to this is what I do. And we'll share that, right? So the question we're going to answer today is, what is the big idea, right? This is the most important question for this. So we're going to go through some examples of what this is. We're actually, like I said, we're going to create our own, but there are really 3 parts to the big idea. There's the why, the uniqueness, and the pain. And each one of these works together to have a really a big idea, your elevator pitch, so to speak, something you can say in 10 seconds or less. So that's what we're going to do today. So let's dig on in. So the first, your why. Why does your brand exist, right? This is not the external reason to make money and blah, 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 blah. But why, as the founder, employer, whatever, did you decide to start this company or this brand or launch this thing, write this product, this book in the absolute first place, right? You could spend your time doing anything. What show? Why did you choose this? And again, fame, fortune, prestige, money, you want to be a unicorn? Doesn't matter. This has to be this internal thing, like you feel it in your guts. This is the emotional part, right? Think the pathos, right? Emotional appeal. Like, why? What is this thing, right? So let's take a look at an example of a why. So this is Winter. I don't know if any of you guys know Winter. They're a SaaS company that does B2B buyer intelligence, right? So why do you think they exist, right? I'm probably pretty easy because they're pretty good at this, but let me tell you why I think they exist, right? And they are on a mission to make messaging a measurable part of marketing, right? This is pretty simple, but yet really hard to do because, in marketing and all these sort of things, everyone's like marketing is this nebulous thing, right? Like, what do they even do? Isn't it some 2-drink minimum that they go to the bar? Like it's nebulous, right? I mean, part of the reason why there's 7,000 different MarTech companies, SaaS companies, right? Because everyone's trying to figure this out. But for they take this very strong, like we want to make messaging really part of marketing. That's beautiful, right? Again, this is my take. I mean, Pep over there could have a different story, right? So unique. So let's talk about some uniqueness, okay? Uniqueness is the single thing you want to lead with. I mean, you may have tons. I'm sure you do, right? But it's the main differentiating factor. This is the top unique thing. And why we won't only focus on one initially is because we need to be clear, concise, and compelling so that we're focused, right? We're starting the conversation. This is what a big idea is. It's supposed to start the conversation. It doesn't end the conversation. It's supposed to start the conversation. So just remember that, okay? So let's look at one of my favorite companies, a company called Respana. They do link building made easy and automated, outreach and stuff. Well, okay, link backs, it's not really unique, right? But in my opinion, right, this is me, I think the one thing that they really do well is don't spam, but build relationships. So their whole philosophy, their whole tool set is for you to have long-term relationships with the people that you're pitching, right? To get those link backs, to get all those things that are important, right? Because, like business is all about relationships, communication, right? I mean, sure, people have told you this. And it's important that you don't just make it transactional, right? So build the lasting relationships. That is why I think Respond is unique. Okay, the next one is the pain. This is always a good one, right? This is the main pain, the big pain, the pain that will prompt folks to action. This is the festering one. Like, I cannot stand this pain so much. Take my money. That's what we're talking about, right? It's on the top 1 or top 3 thing. Like, it's something that's super, super gosh, I got to figure this out, right? And for this one, we will go to our friends at Product Led. I hope Wes and the gang doesn't get too upset at me hopefully I won't mess this up. But, we know who these guys are, right? That's why we're here, right? This is a very powerful thing, right? So what is the pain that product-led growth and the product-led team actually solve for us? Again, my opinion, Wes, I hope I get it right, and the other team, right? So what is it? SaaS is saturated, right? Customers demand a seamless product experience, especially B2B SaaS, right? So I think this is it. There's a lot we can learn from here. Maybe we could talk about it a little bit later, but you can kind of see what we're talking about with these 3 things, right? Why, unique, and pain. Why, unique, and pain. Think about that. Think about these things because, again, soon we are going to do this for you. And it's really important that you actually do this and you think about it, because what I want you guys to get out of this webinar is crafting your first draft of your big idea. So that's what we're going to do. Okay. Before we do that, let's take a look at some just examples, right? We did some piecemeal, but let's go through what I would consider a big idea for these companies. Again, this is my opinion. This is what I think. I haven't asked them, we'll see, see what you guys think as we talk more about it. Okay, so here we go. So winter, right? Data-driven messaging for B2B buyer intelligence. That's a very simple, big idea. You know nothing about money and growth and all these sort of things. That is their central big idea, can be said in less than 10 seconds, right? So if you're a follower of Pep Laya, who's the CEO on LinkedIn or everything else, next time you hear him talk, is this what he's talking about, right? So there's one. Autopilot. I don't know if you guys know about Autopilot. It's one of those marketing automation tools, one of those 7,000 marketing automation tools. But this is what I think their big idea is. Bring together every customer interaction to understand the journey so that you can connect when it counts, right? We all know that timing is everything. Intent is everything. Someone's searching for something. We want to be top of mind. Someone's on our website doing something, opening an email, abandoning a cart, right? We need to know those things so that we can then craft a message and an outreach that hopefully they become our customer, or they buy more, or they upgrade, or they tell their buddies or whatever, right? Okay. Next one is Jarvis. I don't know if you guys know Jarvis.ai. It is a AI content robot. So we want what they do, create content faster with artificial intelligence. Again, it's nothing about fame, fortune, prestige, money, none of that. It's like, this is a very core thing. Can we use artificial intelligence to create content? Now, I'd probably add create great content faster, but I mean, you got to start somewhere, right? Okay. So one more. This is our product-led folks. Again, this is me. So Wes and the guys, sorry if I doesn't kind of resonate, but I'd love to hear what you guys think. So of course, we're going to do that. So again, we started off with SaaS is saturated. Customers demand a seamless product experience. I underline that, right? Build products that sell themselves. Now, that's a pretty tall order for some people, right? Because again, we're going from maybe a sales-led process to now a product-led process where it's demo and this and that. And you saw the graph, right? All this process or this process. This is a very fundamental shift. And I think the big idea for product-led, right? So again, that's just me. But again, I hopefully, got some of those guys on the call and we'll kind of work through it, right? Okay. So we're going to do this now. We're going to craft your big idea. Okay. So I created a Google sheet you guys can copy and you can put all the answers to these questions in right now. Okay. There's the massive link to it, but we'll put a link in there so you guys can copy, and we'll wait a second or two for you guys to do that. And what's beautiful about this is that hopefully by the end of this, you'll actually have a decent draft, right? Because we're talking through the process, right? And of course, if you have questions, you can answer questions and we'll do all that. So, okay, we're going to pause just quick, and then we'll get going. Okay, so the first question, remember we talked about this is the why. Why does your brand exist? Okay, take a moment and think about this and jot down 1 to 2 sentences, just 1 to 2. I know it's hard, right? And then pick a single word that describes it. And this word should be something that pops into your head quickly, right? So think about that. Take some time to do it. Just again, sometimes it's challenging. If you want to write more than 1 to 2 sentences, you can, but this will work a lot better if you just write 1 to 2 sentences. Pick a word, and remember, no buzzword bingo. Make it as simple, clear, concise, and compelling as possible. You saw, some of those examples that were really good, right? No buzzwords. None, right? Okay, let's pause here for a moment while you do that, and then we'll move on. Okay, so next question. How is your brand unique? Same instructions, right? 1 to 2 sentences, then pick a word, okay? Now, again, it may be challenging and you may not be someone that can write quickly, but usually your first instinct of just writing stuff down, and I know I said no buzzword bingo, try not to do that, but if you're inundated with buzzwords, fine. The whole point is to get this on the page, get it on the page, because we're going to refine it. Just write it down. 1 to 2 sentences, and pick a single word that describes it, okay? We're going to pause for a second while you do that, and then we'll move on. Okay, next, what pain does your brand solve? Remember, we talked about this before, right? We saw some examples. Same instructions. 1 to 2 sentences, pick a single word that describes it, okay? Very important that the pain be the big pain, the one pain. I know you've got multiple pains you solve. You're the best thing since sliced bread, the iPhone, and juicy fruit. I don't know, but pick one. This is focus, right? These things are meant to open the conversation. You do not have to say everything, okay? I'll tell you what the real, behind this in a second. So 1 to 2 sentences, pick a word, and then we'll wait a little bit, and then we'll move on. Okay, now we're going to pull it all together, okay? And take the answers from those 3 questions. Hopefully, you've written in the Google Doc, made a copy of it. We're going to combine all of those sentences into 1 to 2 sentences that's going to be your big idea, and try to incorporate those 3 words, right? You notice this pattern of 3, right? There's a reason for that, which I'll tell you in a second, but it's important. This idea, consolidate those 3 questions the best you can, right? Again, think, how can I consolidate the why, the unique, and the pain into something I can say in 10 seconds, right? We talked about that a little bit before. It's important, not quick, like, blah, 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 right? It's like, how can I do that, right? So we're going to pause here, have you do that, and then we'll move on. Okay, so let's hear some of your big ideas. So most important thing about this is to practice these things, right? Clear, concise, and compelling big ideas happen because of practice and feedback, okay? So again, you want to be able to say this in less than 10 seconds at a reasonable talking pace, like what I'm doing right now is. All right. So this is the place we're going to pause a little bit and see if any of you guys came up with a big idea. Now, I know it's pretty quick, right? We went pretty quick. And some of you may think, oh gosh, this is really, really kind of nutty. But usually your first instinct is the right instinct. So would anyone like to share in the chat or see if they had any questions or this is crazy, wacky? Feel free, right? You'll notice that my the pause here in the thing, I got a plant. I got a brand new plant yesterday. So I'm feeling the oxygen, I'm feeling the excitement, and I'm on my second double espresso. So I'm ready to go. So anyone have any questions so far, or put them in the chat? If not, we can continue on, but wanted to give people the opportunity to, ask what they may have on that. We'll have another opportunity to ask questions a little later. So don't, if you're shy, I get it. It's early. I mean, it's early here on the West Coast. So any questions?
Chances are they're probably fine tuning.
That's true. There's one. Could you have your big idea framed like a question? Oh, that's actually a really good idea. Typically, no. Usually the big idea is a statement. But what you just put in, what if you never had to reconcile billing again? That could be a really great lead for a landing page. But generally you want it to be a statement that's your North Star, right? So in your example, your big idea may be, your company exists to, reduce, remove reconciling bills by automation through AI because your time's better spent building your product and not billing for it or something like that, right? I mean, Ashley, if I don't know what your business is, but good question though. We envision a world where MSPs can choose, use, and offer any products to their customers seamlessly integrated with their platform of choice, aligned for a level of MSP business automation, which has never been possible. Delivering IT services is hard enough. Running your MSP business shouldn't be. And what's MSP? I'm sorry, I'm not hip to the jam on that. Is that like Microsoft? Oh, managed service providers. Okay. Interesting. I mean, that's a really good start, Ashley. I think a lot of times what you did there was, of course, if someone is an MSP, then they're going to resonate. They're going to know that. Other times you might want to expand what that means just so it captures a broader audience. Sometimes that's can anchor it a little bit better. Then you get some kind of crossover, but that's a really good start. Awesome. And let's see from Eager, I think. Altum provides all kinds of lead scoring in one solution. Okay, so the pain really is this lead scoring problem. You have to then understand what's unique about that, and then obviously why you're doing it, right? But that's a good start. I mean, very simple. Like everyone has got a lead sourcing problem. I can't think of one company that doesn't have a lead sourcing problem, right? Let's see, from Deborah. Ad shoppers exist to provide Permission-based marketing to unknown website traffic. Oh, okay. Interesting. So I think on this one, what you may want to do is expand a little bit on what permission-based marketing means. I think people know what unknown web traffic or anonymous web traffic, or, that's the new thing now. Everyone's sort of locking down on tracking and stuff. And then I think, understand what the pain is in that. And I think clearly, yeah, it's gonna be, how do you reach out to the people that you don't know that are coming to your site? So that's a really good start. I'd say probably add in a little bit more about why it's unique. If there's other people in your niche, I mean, clearly there's competitors, right? But what are the one thing you do? Okay. Here's Sammy's: speak to leads, converts inbound form leads into immediate phone conversations. Okay. That's actually really very clear, very concise. So exactly what you do, really simple. I'd say, probably if you have that problem, you kind of know in your heart that, it would be great to, grab that quick. That's really good, actually. Pretty solid. I think I would add a little bit more about the why you guys do it. Could be, you had personal experience with it, or your team, or, hey, a lead is ready when they actually done something. So, don't miss out on another lead or something like that. Okay, here's one from Tom. Trend Micro minimizes your fears with our simplified cloud security solution. Okay, so clearly that's a big pain. There's clearly a lot of issue with cloud security, obviously. I think I'd go into a little more detail about why you're unique. My guess is there's some really cool thing, because there's usually some really cool stuff around that. Like maybe it's better orchestration or better, I don't know, who knows? And then of course the why, which is honestly a little harder. Whys, sometimes you have to sit down and think with more than one cup of coffee. Okay. Raphael: Cloud One provides developer-led, Cisco approved security for cloud native applications. Okay. So my guess is the issue being how tough it is as a developer, to deal with all the security and issue. I guess that's Cisco, CISO. Oh, okay, cool. Oh, okay, cool. Okay, I didn't know that. Chief Information. Okay, interesting. Okay, so that's a little bit more of a buzzword. So I'd probably say like Cloud One provides developer-led. Oh God, that's a tough one. Yeah, good point. Security first. Something that's like, yeah, I'd have to think about that a little more, but I like the whole for cloud native applications. I guess maybe people who want a cloud native application would know what that is. I'm not 100% sure what that is, but yeah, you may want to add a little bit why it's unique, as well as the uniqueness, and of course the why you do it. So, wow, those were all really great. Wow, congratulations. I see, it's tough, and it's also tough to share. So thanks everyone. Thanks Raphael, Tom, Sammy, Deborah, Ashley, Iger, for being brave enough to share with us. So we'll have a little more time at the end of this to do a little bit more Q&A. But I wanted to kind of stop here to give people a taste, and then we'll continue on. And then of course we can do more of it. Feel free to, add in the chat as we go. The document that the template thing is for you to like look through, figure out, hey, how does this work? And then you'll find out a little bit more about how you can do more of this. So here we go. Let's keep on going. A reasonable talking pace. Okay. So we'll hit, pause here for a second, and we'll love to hear some of your big ideas. We can get some feedback on that. And then hopefully by the end, you'll have something that you can refine, right? Okay, so let's hear your big ideas. Okay, wow. So that was great. Thank you so much for being here for Story-Driven Outreach for Product-Led Growth Companies. I'd like to thank the product-led team for allowing me to do this. Super fun. I really love the community. It's such a great community. So this is just awesome. And I really, really appreciate that. So wanted to give you a few takeaways before we leave each other. Of course, I'm in Slack, so you could probably find me in Slack if you have some questions. But first one is stories are in our DNA, right? You got to remember that. We love stories, 100% fact, right? The best ones are the more simple ones, not complex, right? We want to aim for the 6th grade level of comprehension. 6th grade, not 12th grade, not 15th grade, 6th grade, 5th to 6th grade. We want to use no buzzwords if we can, okay? Because we're trying to get above the noise. We're trying to get people to like listen to us, right? Because the whole point of this big idea, this pitch, is for someone to literally say, tell me more about that thing you just said. That's what we're going for. Tell me more. Not you told them everything, tell me more, right? And then number 3, the best story wins. Hands down. Product, unfortunately, you got to get it right. It's not going to win the game. Your story, your outreach, how well you have the slippery slope, right? To get people to try your product. It's not your product. That's hard for some of you technical people to know. And I should know I was an engineer for a long time. Like I was at 7 startups, like 6 of them, I was a tech lead, right? So I get it, right? And the one I'm almost goes without saying, but I wanted to just bring this up. Practice, practice, practice. Get it under 10 seconds. Talk with your team about it. Really practice this thing. And you will see, right, that a great outreach effort. Again, this starts with this big idea. When you have that, you'll be able to craft the email. You'll be able to talk to people in the elevator. You'll be able to do your pitch. You'll be able to get on a sales call. Be able to talk to your team. Once your team like is aligned to this, right? Everyone's saying the same thing. You amplify, right? So, but before I take some questions, if you guys have any questions, let me just, there's just one more thing. It's always one more thing with me, right? There's another aspect of a successful story that I haven't gone over yet. One of which you've seen, but probably don't know the name of it. In fact, I actually did it during this webinar. You probably didn't, did you catch it? Did you catch it? Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. Stories, they have to pay off what you set up. So there's a setup and a payoff. If you have great outreach that actually gets something, like someone says, yeah, give me the pitch, you got to deliver the goods, right? This also applies to your through line of your story and, of course, your product-led growth, right? Hey, try our great tool. If it's not a great tool, you got to pay off your promise, right? So you noticed I hadn't mentioned Jane up until now. That's because she died on April 3rd of 2017 from leukemia. This photo was taken 3 months after she died. So when I look back at all those trips that I went on with her, and the first trip to Nashville, and all of the kind of gifts that she gave me, I want to tell everyone about it because she's the reason why I do this. She's the reason why I know all this stuff. She taught me, right? And that gift that I'm working on right now, I call the story funnel. I mean, this webinar is one of those steps in the journey, right? To use outreach and stories so that people take notice, right? So there's some passion behind it. So you feel the why. So you know my why. You know the why I'm doing this. It's because of her. It's my mission. It really is for the rest of my life to teach as many people as I can the power of storytelling, what she taught me, to live her legacy, right? And what's beautiful is she taught me to move through the pain and grief of her leaving me, and I found love again, and I'm writing a new story, right? And that's beautiful. Like, how lucky am I to find 2 people to love, right? And I'm very blessed that way. That's the power of storytelling. So with that, thank you so much for being on the webinar. If you want to learn more about stories and get your story straight, you can go on over to the storyfunnel.co. We actually have a free tool that you can use to build a brand story guide that will take your entire team through this process and a little bit more. So I know it's just you, but how about if your whole team fill this out? We can actually do an analysis and we can tell you what the rest of the team thinks so that you can align, right, your product-led growth team, your RevOps team, and all your customers, right? Because those are the 3 things you got to worry about. We talk about product-led growth a lot, but there's also all the RevOps side, right? Product, sales, marketing, customer support, which I know is a little bit part of it, but there's a disconnect, right? We got to take stories and wrap around what we're trying to do. So that is the power of story-driven outreach. And thank you so much again to the product-led team for having me. Appreciate it. And I'll take some questions.
Yeah, hello. Everyone okay? You okay, Jerry?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Right. We'll
Taking a
be
sip of coffee.
we'll be accepting questions now. It was watching it like the second, third time. I gotta admit, it hits different. What you're sharing here is quite powerful and extremely useful. And one other thing that I took note about this webinar in particular is that the attendees that we had during the start are practically the same attendees. Like we started with like 16, 17, and most we had 18. And now we have 14 people here. And the I wish that, or I think they understand the power of being able to really tell your story here, because that's what had made the mistake, as you were applying the story-driven outreach during your entire webinar. In our case, in product leds, our one statement pitch or our elevator pitch would be, we help you build a product that sells itself. So it resolves that why we're here. It resolves the pain that we're trying to fix, and it's easy to understand, right? Because that's the entire point of being product led. I'll let you take over from here. So I'd like to ask the chat, what's one takeaway that you got from this webinar? Any takers? Going once.
Maybe they're just
twice.
all like, they're all creativity out.
Yeah, because what's beautiful about this webinar of yours is that it gets your gears turning, and at the same time, you're semi sort of forced, and I'm saying this as a good thing. You're forced to eliminate all of or most of the fluff that you're trying to deliver, because what's the point? Why are you here? You're asking the great big why. What's the big idea? So the entire point of the webinar was like to make sure people get you and you stay in their heads, because they may not buy from you right off the get-go. But yep, there we go. We have Vladimir.
Here we go. Takeaway from Vladimir. You should always come to the first principles when you're reasoning in the business. This phrase is based on why unique pain is a great way to boil down into the core principle. Yeah, 100% right. It is a lot of this is similar, right? Core value, core principle. I mean, some of the stuff we do at the story funnels, we talk about your core value. That's like the first question. And that guides as well. Yeah, it's actually a very good one. Great. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, to your point about showing up in an authentic way, and your core values, your big idea, why you do things, that gets you through what's called the dark night of the soul in storytelling, right? Any of you have ever seen a great movie, Star Wars, even, Die Hard, right? There's a dark night of the soul when the character just really sits there and just says, oh gosh, am I going to make it, right? That is what we're talking about when it comes to your big idea. When you're going through the challenges and struggles, when you anchor back to that North Star, it makes life a lot easier. And you could do this in your own life too. I mean, you heard the reason I do this now, right? And it was, one of those very traumatic things where you can either do post-traumatic growth or post-traumatic regress. Like you could go down a rabbit hole and never come out. And almost went down that rabbit hole. And I'm glad that I had people, loving me and taking care of me to do that. And you have to do the same thing with your business, right? It takes on a personality of its own. So does anyone have any more questions? Happy to answer them. Can I have a question via voice? That's from Vladimir. I think you can do that. I'm not sure how to do that. Can you unmute him?
No,
there he
I can
is.
do this. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, guys. I was just wondering. Okay, so the question for me is like that. First of all, Jarie, thank you. That's a really thoughtful stuff, and thanks for sharing this kind of story. And I was just thinking that you're kind of putting this kind of story narrative along the way. So I was just feeling you're kind of crafting the story in itself. But the question here is that how we can use this kind of phrase we're calling insight for the company as a principle for the company, and how we can marry this with the end user experience. And I will explain the difference for us. So we are kind of providing a healthcare stack for the private practices. So they're kind of helping the practices to run the practice, to book the patients, to provide the prescriptions, like, I don't know, do the emails, like video calls, all this stuff. So a lot of like complicated integrations, but it all boils down to the users, which are kind of non-IT tech savvy at all. It's about like managing the day-to-day stuff and not ruining the business. So it's like, I'm outsourcing all technology. I'm doing the like healthcare provisional stuff as a doctor. So it's like very basic. That's what's understood by the customers. But the stuff we are kind of building for us, and the way we are kind of talking with the investors about that, is that, okay, guys, there is this kind of healthcare delivery process. When we're helping those providers, to build all those relationships, we kind of coin those providers like in a big chunks. We have a marketplace of them. We have a ecosystem of different like vendors and providers. And the value of the platform is much bigger. And the way we see this is that we value the healthcare of each person. It's like, we believe that your health is like a very number one asset for you. So we want to help doctors to help you to preserve this asset. And in this case, our why is like so high and so big for us that it actually being realized in what that is really simple to the end users. So how we should bridge the gap between the why we can declare and the real what we're delivering, because investors are buying why, users are buying what, and what is our message and should be on the site based
Right.
on our
No, I mean, that's actually a really great question. And a lot of startups have that problem, right? It's the whole kind of thing about tactics, strategy, and grand strategy. So in military planning, tactics are, win the battle, strategy wins the war, and grand strategy wins the peace. So you always got to think like 3-4 steps ahead. So when it comes to what you're doing in healthcare, I've got some experience in this. I was a founder of a digital health company called Lab Sensor Solutions. And what we were doing is tracking the temperature and location of perishable medical supplies so they don't spoil. Our big idea was that we felt that the integrity of a clinical sample, will help people just be better diagnosed and be healthier. That's a very broad, big idea, and clinical laboratory, taking the blood out of your arm is a very small part of it, but it was self-consistent across the entire spectrum. So what I always do is I look at all those kind of communications channels, and at each step, I try to bring it up a level. And I always think tactics, strategy, grand strategy. So in your case, your grand strategy or your big idea is, look, we're building tools and AI and all this technology so that doctors can focus on making patients healthier and happier, because we want the world to be healthier and happier. That's very broad. And you can do that a million different ways, right? We happen to use technology to allow that to happen. So for a doctor, they look at your stuff as like, oh, I don't have to deal all this other BS. I can focus on my patients. I can be more efficient. I can see more patients because I don't have to worry about paperwork, right? There's a company called DeepScribe that's doing exactly this. Literally, you talk, the doctor talks, and it takes the notes, right? And it's like beautiful because they don't have to take the notes. They hate taking notes. What doctor likes to sit there and take notes? None, zero, right? So if you're doing something similar, it's always about connecting the dots to what like someone's doing. So if someone's like, hey, we're making this interface 5 times easier, 3 less steps, it's pretty down in the weeds, right? But that always goes up to the North Star. So I think in your case, you sound like you have a really good like idea on it anyway. Like the North Star is we build technology so that doctors can help more patients be healthier and happier. Very big goal. And then how you do that is every channel. We do that through better technology. We do that through product, best customer class customer service. Like there's these silos, but it all stems and goes down. And the trick and the test I always use is if I can go up and down every single stakeholder with my big idea and it resonates with them, then I nailed it. So my guess is the programmers, they'll be like, yeah, our goal is to help doctors so they can help more people be healthy and happier. Yeah, I get that. How does me, making a better chatbot do that? Oh, I can make it more efficient. They can be happier. I can see, I feel good about that. It passes the test, right? And again,
So it's like actually this kind of why unique pain is kind of why is like the grand vision. Like unique is like, okay, we're doing this in the technology using some kind of tools X, Y, and Z and like connected. And the pain is the real stuff that you actually buying from the market, which is like what's day to day, like day-to-day
exactly. Like
problems.
When a doctor shows up to your site, like they have a pain.
They're buying the pain. Exactly. Yeah. They can commit to why and they can understand, they can resonate with your why, but there's the pain they're buying.
They're buying on the pain and the emotion, and they're validating they validate their purchase based on logic, right? So they're going to want to know that I can onboard quickly. It's easy to use. My staff don't have to worry about it. It won't break, like there's all these things, right? And it sounds like you have it in your head. The real trick is trying to figure out how that goes up and down your entire value chain, from investor to customer service at 2 a.m, trying to solve some broken connection that, you know what I mean? And
clear the cache.
And that never happens, right? Never, ever. Wonderful question. Keep up the good work, man.
Any other questions coming in? Okay. We do have like 4 minutes remaining, and I'm sure a lot of gears are turning in everybody's heads, especially those that are staying here. Jarie, what's the best way for our viewers to see you?
Yeah, so like I said, I'm in the Slack, the Product-Led Growth Slack channel, pretty active. I love being of service to a community. So Slack, if you're in the Product-Led Growth community, best way to reach me, just DM me. Check out the storyfunnel.co. You could do a free brand story guide. Basically, we take your team through those questions we just did with a couple more so we can build what we call the brand story guide. It's pretty easy to LinkedIn, Twitter. I have a unique name. So there's probably only one Jarie Bolander in the world. And if you found him, you probably found me. And so please, reach out on LinkedIn or in the Slack. Head over to the storyfunnel.co. My main business is I have a PR marketing and strategic communications firm called JSY PR and Marketing. JSY stands for Jane Shinyi Yin, which was Jane's maiden name. So I still run that. And I'd love to talk more. And if you guys have any questions, just let me know. Happy to answer them.